The night smelled like white roses and expensive lies. 100 guests glittered under crystal chandeliers in the Watergate ballroom, their laughter clinking against glass like ice in a highball. A jazz trio hummed in the corner, waiters drifted past in black vests, a cake with silver leaf and sugared peonies waited on a mirrored table as if it had its own pulse. I remember the way the air felt on my skin, cool from the vents, perfumed with gardenia and the faint singe of tea lights. 25 years, a silver anniversary. A lifetime polished until it hurt to look. Smother floated through our guests like a queen in pale silk, resting her manicured hand on elbows, whispering something, smiling too much. She wore diamonds I'd seen only at Christmas and funerals. She kissed my cheek and left a cold spot that didn't warm. "You look radiant," she said. "50 looks good on you." I was 48, but accuracy had never been love language. My husband adjusted his tie, the navy one I'd bought when he got promoted to regional director. He smelled overconfident, like bergamot and new money, and he flashed that winning grin that had sold so many people on so many bad ideas. "Ready," he murmured. "For what?" I asked, even though the answer tiptoed around the edges of my skull. He squeezed my waist for show. His palm felt hot through the silk of my dress and then was gone. The MC tapped his mic. "Ladies, and if I could have your attention for a very special toast." A hush moved across the room like a single creature settling down. Glasses lifted, heads turned. The band took a breath between songs, and there he was, my husband, standing beneath the chandelier, the microphone in his hand as if he had been born holding it. "Friends," began, voice warm, trained by years of pitching investors and placating boardrooms. "Thank you for celebrating 25 years with us. My wife, my partner." He paused just long enough to let the room coo on cue. He knew his audience. He always did. "Tonight is about truth." I felt the blood in my wrists push harder. He talked about how time changes people, how paths diverge, how love can be complicated. I heard phrases he had practiced in the bathroom at 2 a.m., those polished marbles rolling off his tongue. Authentic life, brave choices, respectful transition. He looked at me and smiled the way men smile before they say something unforgivable. Then he pulled a slim envelope from inside his jacket. In the bright light, the paper flashed like a fish turning in the dark. "For transparency," he said, and the word landed with soft cruelty, "I've decided the healthiest way forward is to honor what was and release what no longer is. I've filed for divorce." A sound left my body that wasn't a word. It was the sound a rib makes when it remembers it can break. Someone gasped, a spoon clinked to a plate. The bandleader looked down at his sheet music and pretended not to hear. Held the envelope up for the room to see like a prize he'd won. "It's time for both of us to be happy," he continued, and happiness in his mouth tasted like someone else's perfume. "We'll make it clean and fair. I'll be moving on. We'll move out of the condo by tomorrow." He said the condo like a hotel reservation, not the place where we'd painted the hallway twice and learned grief and burned a roast we still laugh about when we're kind to each other. His lips glistened. I saw the little twitch in his left eye, the tell he gets when he's lying or buying something he can't afford. My fingers found the tablecloth and pinched in hard. The fabric was smooth, expensive, a rental chosen for strangers' photos. Across the room, a woman I had met once lifted her phone because this is the age when pain is content. A lemon slice dried on the lip of my water glass. I could smell the sugar roses on the cake. Everything in me went quiet, the way animals go still before the storm hits the barn. Didn't applaud, but she smiled with all her teeth. A few polite claps fluttered and died. Extended the envelope toward me like a bouquet that had gone to seed. "No hard feelings," he said softly into the mic, but the softness was for show. 25 years is long enough. We both deserve a new chapter." New chapter? He'd been saying that phrase in the mirror for weeks, his lips shaping into a line he thought looked wise. My parents had gifted me that condo before the wedding. My father's hands had still smelled like machine oil and peppermint when he pressed the deed into mine. Had moved in 2 months later with a suitcase and promises. I kept my breath inside my ribs, counted 4, remembered other details. The squeak in the foyer floorboard, the way shoes sounded when he came home late, the scent of bergamot mixing with a floral I couldn't name. I reached for the mic, hesitated, a flick of his eyes toward the back corner where a sharp-suited man in a cheap tie, Hayes, the lawyer, pretended to study the centerpiece. I lifted the microphone and my hands stopped shaking. "Thank you," I said. My voice surprised me. It sounded like the kind of steel you only find at the bottom of a sea. The room stilled the way a room does when the truth decides to climb out of its chair. "I'll be brief," I said, because brevity is a blade, and I'll be clear because clarity is mercy. I looked at my husband, at the mouth that had kissed me beneath fireworks and said I tasted like June. A memory, the heat of his palm at my back when my mother died, the way he kept talking when I stopped listening, the calendar reminder on his phone that said call S at 11:00 a.m. I smelled roses and the faint copper of panic under cologne. Is right about one thing, I told our friends. Tonight should be about truth. Behind the dessert table, Sierra, that was her name, I had learned, stood in a scrap of a dress that cost more than my monthly grocery bill. She'd been introduced as new marketing assistant. Her hair fell in expensive waves, her eyes slid past me like I was an ad she'd scrolled by. I smiled at her, something gentle, something deadly. Before I say what I came to say, I continued, I want to paint you a picture because pictures stay. Their faces leaned in, my boss from Alliance, my cousin Dwayne, aunt who smelled like talc and peppermint, a handful of colleagues shifting in their seats. The bandleader held his trumpet at his side and forgot to breathe. Let's start with a perfect family, I said. Two young people in love, a condo in Georgetown, a view of the river, cheap second-hand furniture that feels like treasure, a mother-in-law who never calls the wife daughter but calls often, a husband who is always just a little late but always has a reason that sounds like success. My throat wanted to close around the next words, I didn't let it. Then the hairline cracks, I said. 3 a.m. calls in the hallway, whispered plans at the bedroom door, a calendar reminder on his phone that lights up the night, call us a husband who changes passwords after 25 years, a mother-in-law who asks lightly, where do you keep the condo papers, a lawyer named Hayes who knows where to wait. The smile thinned, the cheap tie lawyer shifted his chair back a fraction. Do you smell that? I asked the room, and they laughed thinly before they realized I wasn't joking. That's the scent of gardenias and a match. I could feel the microphone warming under my fingers, hear the air conditioning whisper through the vents, see the sweat start to bead its hairline. He lifted his glass and didn't drink. 25 years is long enough, I repeated softly, quoting him back to himself, to learn to stop mistaking compliance for kindness. It's long enough to memorize the sound of a lie dressed up as concern. Someone near the back whispered, oh my God, and someone else murmured, let her finish. I let my eyes find Sierra's again. 25 years is also long enough, I said, to keep receipts. You could feel the shift then, the room leaning forward, the air taking sides. I slid my free hand into the clutch on my lap and touched paper. Not just any paper. My father's deed, the one with the oil and peppermint smell that had never quite washed out, printouts of bank withdrawals and slanted signature. A photo from Galleria had texted me 2 days ago, with Sierra under chandeliers, both of them studying rings. I've been quiet, I said, on purpose. Clicked his tongue against his teeth, the warning sound men make when they're about to talk over you. He didn't get the chance. But let me ask a question before I continue, I said, and my voice went so calm it chilled me. When a man scripts a public humiliation for his wife and calls it honesty, what do you call a woman who refuses to read her lines? The room answered me with silence, the kind that glows, jaw set, diamonds through ice. I turned slightly, looking at the people who had eaten our food and loved our versions of ourselves. In a minute, I said, you'll hear details, you'll hear names, you'll see signatures, you'll smell the singe of a bridge that will never be rebuilt. I took one breath, slow. The roses were suddenly too sweet. Somewhere near the bar, a glass cracked lightly at its rim because someone held it too tight. But first, I said, let me thank my husband for saving me time. I was going to give a toast about loyalty. Instead, I'll give one about truth. I lifted my water glass because it felt cleaner than champagne. To truth, I said, my eyes never leaving, the kind you can hold up to the light. I set the glass down, slid the microphone along my palm the way you might slide a scalpel across a tray, and reached into the clutch for the first document. Let's begin, I said. The paper in my hand was old, the ink a shade bluer than modern printers make. My father's signature curved like a bridge. The deed smelled faintly of the box where I had kept it since before the wedding. I lifted it so the front rows could see the county seal, the date. That condo you just put me out of, I said to my voice as even as a cutting board, was a gift to me from my parents 2 months before you moved your suitcase in. It isn't ours, it is mine, it always has been. Inhaled sharply, Hayes, the lawyer, blinked. His left eye twitched, then twitched again. The bandleader made a small sound, a trapped note, then went still. And as for the rest, I let the sentence dangle like a foot over a cliff, and for a beat the entire ballroom leaned after it, hungry. Because here is the thing about a perfect family at a silver-leaf table under crystal. When the blade finally comes down, everyone wants to know how deep it will go. I smiled without showing teeth. I held the next envelope up to the light. The paper was thicker, the numbers on it had their own kind of gleam. Do you want to see what he spent to make tonight look beautiful? I asked. Or do you want to know who paid for the ring he studied at? I let my eyes drift to Sierra. Or should we start with the loans? Someone whispered, loans, and someone else said, oh no. Tried to speak, I raised a finger, no louder than a breath. He closed his mouth. I looked back to the room, felt the heat from the fixtures on my cheekbones, tasted metal at the back of my tongue. This will be the last time I explain myself, I said. and the first time I explain him. The jazz trio had stopped pretending to shuffle music. They were motionless, instruments in their laps like sleeping animals. Every guest was riveted to the sound of my voice and the rustle of paper. I unfolded the bank statement. The top line was a date, the second, a number that had made my throat go dry in our kitchen, the third, a memo about an upscale jewelry store. It would have been almost funny if it hadn't been mine. I looked up. Shall we? I asked. And then I told the room what I had found on his locked phone at 3 a.m., what S stood for, what had practiced in her head all week, what Hayes hoped I would sign without looking, until the ballroom, the cake, and the chandelier weren't anymore. They were witnesses. But the worst part, the sharpest edge, the part that cut even me as I held it up to the light, I hadn't said it yet. I saved that for last. Because you only get one chance to choose the moment when a lie stops breathing. And I was going to choose perfectly. The silence in the ballroom was so deep I could hear the soft ticking of the chandelier bulbs cooling above us. His confident smile faltered for the first time in years. His fingers twitched at his side, and that tiny movement, barely a flicker, made the entire room shift its energy. People who had come expecting champagne and speeches now stared, wide-eyed, waiting for the perfect couple to disintegrate before them. I held up the papers again, the seal glinting under the crystal light. This document, I said clearly, proves that the condo my husband just asked me to vacate belongs solely to me. It was a wedding gift from my parents. My father signed the transfer 2 months before the marriage, and his name was added later, out of sentiment, not legality. There was a murmur from the tables. I could hear someone whisper, "Wait, so he doesn't even own it." Another voice, sharper, "Is this real?" "Oh, it's very real," I said softly, "because that's what happens when you underestimate the woman who built your life with you." His jaw tightened. "That's enough," he hissed, forgetting the microphone still picked up his voice. His whisper rolled across the speakers like a hiss of static. I smiled. "Enough? Oh no, dear, this is the beginning." The audience gasped, and I could feel their hearts swinging in rhythm with mine. I had been quiet for too long. I had been the calm wife, the understanding spouse, the woman who let small cruelties slide for the sake of peace. Tonight, that woman had died the moment he unfolded those divorce papers. I let the papers rest on the table beside the champagne glasses, then placed both hands around the microphone. "You all see us here tonight dressed like the perfect couple," I began. "But perfection is the easiest illusion to sell, especially when you've spent your life managing someone else's image." My mind pulled me backward to another night 25 years earlier. Our wedding had been small but elegant, held in my parents' garden beneath fairy lights that my father strung up himself, had looked at me like I was the miracle he'd been waiting for. He promised me partnership, respect, and a life built together. I believed him. But promises fade faster than photographs. The first signs came small, a quiet criticism here, a belittling joke there. Was ambitious, always chasing the next raise, the next title, the next applause. And with every new success he grew hungrier. The man I married wanted to build a life. The man I lived with wanted to own one. Was always there, of course, weaving her voice through ours. I used to think she loved too much. Now I know she simply loved control. Her words came disguised as advice. "Let him focus on his career, dear, you're better at home things." Or, "Don't bother him with small arguments, he's under pressure." Small arguments, like him staying out late, or suddenly locking his phone, or missing anniversaries because of client dinners. I learned silence before I learned confrontation. The memory shifted again, 10 years into our marriage, when I'd been in the hospital alone, arrived 2 hours later smelling faintly of whiskey. He said the meeting had gone long. He kissed my forehead and told me, "We'll try again, sweetheart." But we never did. Something in him broke that day, perhaps disappointment, perhaps guilt, and something in me started to grow instead, awareness. I looked back at now, the years condensed into this single trembling moment under the chandeliers. "Do you remember," I asked him, "the night my father died, how you told me you'd handle the funeral arrangements because I was too emotional, and then you forgot to call the cemetery until the next morning?" He looked down, embarrassed, maybe even regretful, but it was too late for regret. "That was the first time I realized I couldn't rely on you to protect me," I said. "But I still stayed, because I loved you, because that's what wives do, right? They stay and forgive and pretend it's not raining even when the ceiling leaks." My throat tightened, but I didn't cry. Crying would have given him power. Then came the business trips. "Seattle, you said, always Seattle," until I found out there was no office there, just a woman named Sierra. At her name, the crowd turned toward the back. Sierra froze, one hand still clutching her champagne flute. Her face flushed, but she didn't deny it. "I'm not proud of how I found out," I continued. "It was an accident. A friend saw you two at a jewelry store, said you looked happy, that you were buying a ring." The air thinned, shifted on his feet, but his voice caught when he tried to speak. "Funny thing," I said, "how betrayal never announces itself. It slips in quietly like fog under a door." I turned to the audience again, their eyes wide, their drinks forgot. Do you know what hurts the most? I asked. It's not the affair, it's not even the lies. It's realizing that I spent years defending the man who was slowly erasing me. A woman near the front dabbed at her eyes. A man muttered something about shame, even for all her poise had gone pale. And you, I said, meeting her gaze, you raised him to believe that women are furniture, kept until they creak too loud, then replaced. You taught him that loyalty is for fools. Tried to speak, but her voice faltered. This isn't the place. It's exactly the place, I snapped. Because you were part of it. You sat in my living room asking about property papers, pretending it was out of love for your, who never existed because your son couldn't handle disappointment. You both plotted to strip me of the one thing my parents left me, but you miscalculated one thing. I lifted the next set of papers from my clutch. I don't scare easily anymore. The applause started softly, one clap from somewhere in the back, awkward, nervous, then another, then a third until the sound rolled through the hall like a wave. It wasn't approval, it was catharsis. His face turned crimson. He grabbed for the microphone, but I pulled it back, smiling. You had your turn, love, I whispered. He leaned close enough that only I could hear him. You're humiliating yourself. No, I said, I'm freeing myself. And with that, I turned back to the crowd. Now, before this night ends, there's one last truth. I reached for the envelope marked inheritance, the one I had nearly torn apart in shock weeks ago when I'd first opened it. 3 weeks before tonight, I told them, I received an inheritance from my late aunt in Germany. A condo in Munich, another in Miami Beach, and over $1 million in the bank. I hadn't told anyone, not even I was going to surprise him tonight. A gasp rippled through the room. Sierra's mouth fell open, froze, his hands trembling slightly. But I guess the surprise is mine, I said, voice calm. Because it turns out I'll be spending my silver anniversary planning my future, not our divorce. Laughter broke through, shocked, disbelieving laughter that didn't know whether to cheer or gasp. I didn't join them. I just stared at whose expression was unraveling thread by thread. Then in a voice barely above a whisper, I said, You see, you thought you were ending my life tonight, but all you did was start it. The room erupted, half in applause, half in disbelief. Stood motionless, the envelope of divorce papers still in his hand, looking smaller than I had ever seen him. But even then, even after everything, I saw something flicker behind his eyes, something dangerous. It wasn't shame, it wasn't regret. It was anger. And I knew with absolute clarity that this story was not over. Because men don't lose quietly. And the real reckoning, the one that would tear open everything, was still coming. The night after the anniversary felt like living inside someone else's dream, or maybe a nightmare that hadn't finished writing itself. The party had ended in chaos, whispers still echoing in the hotel corridors long after the last guest left. I could still see his face, pale, trembling, eyes darting like a cornered man. But what I remembered most was the sound of his voice as we drove home in silence. He didn't shout, he didn't beg, he didn't even cry. He just sat there, hands gripping the steering wheel so tight that his knuckles went white. The road stretched ahead in silence, the streetlights flashing across his face in quick, furious bursts. I could almost hear his thoughts, not regret, not confusion, but calculation. When we pulled up to the condo, he killed the engine but didn't move. I waited. You humiliated me, he said finally, his tone flat. I stared out the window. No, I said softly, you did that all by yourself. He turned to me, eyes dark. You had no right. I laughed under my breath. No right? You served me divorce papers in front of 100 people. He didn't answer. The air between us pulsed with the kind of silence that breaks things. I grabbed my purse, opened the door, and stepped out into the cold. The night smelled like rain and roses, the same roses from the ballroom, wilted now in the back seat. I didn't look back as I climbed the stairs to the condo. My heels clicked against the marble floor like the ticking of a clock counting down to something inevitable. Inside, the house looked the same, but it didn't feel like mine anymore. The photos on the walls, the wedding picture on the mantel, the polished dining table, all of it felt staged, like props from a play that had already closed. I walked to the bedroom, the faint hum of city traffic below blending with my own heartbeat. Then I heard it, the sound of footsteps behind me, slow, steady, deliberate. He stopped in the doorway. You think this is over, don't you? He said. I turned to face him. It is. He stepped closer. You think one little speech changes everything. Not everything, I said, meeting his eyes, just enough. He smirked, but it didn't reach his eyes. You really think people will believe your little performance? You're just a bitter woman with good timing. I felt the old version of myself, the quiet, accommodating wife, rise up for one last breath. Then I buried her. Believe what you want, I said. The truth doesn't need your approval. He moved closer, his face just inches from mine. For a moment I could smell the faint trace of whiskey in his cologne, that expensive, hollow scent that always made him feel untouchable. You'll regret this, he whispered. No, I said quietly, you will. I turned away, walked into the guest room, and locked the door behind me. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by the window, staring at the city lights, thinking about the 25 years that had led to this. Every memory, every fight, every apology that came too late, they replayed like an old film I couldn't turn off. I thought of the girl I used to be, the one who thought love meant endurance, who mistook control for care. Around 3 a.m., I heard on the phone in the next room. His voice was low, urgent. Mom, she ruined everything, he hissed. You should seen them, my boss, everyone. They looked at me like I was filth. I can't go to work like this. She's going to destroy me. There was a pause, and then I heard his voice faintly through the wall. Calm down, we'll fix this, we always do. Fix this? He snapped. She's got the documents, Mom. The condo isn't even mine. Hayes didn't tell me that, he said. He stopped. No, I'm not going to jail for this. You hear me? I'll handle it. I pressed my ear closer, heart pounding. Handle it. Two words that could mean anything or everything. The next morning, he was gone before sunrise. His side of the closet was half empty, drawers left open, ties missing. On the kitchen counter, a single note. We'll talk soon, don't make any rash decisions. I almost laughed. After all these years, he still thought he could control the timing of my choices. By noon, the phone started ringing. First my friend, then my boss, then a journalist from some local paper who'd heard rumors about the viral anniversary scandal. Someone had filmed my speech. The clip was everywhere, Facebook, Tik, even local news segments. The title read, Wife Gets Served Divorce Papers on 25th Anniversary, Her Comeback is Legendary. In less than 24 hours, I had become an unwilling symbol of poetic justice. Messages poured in, women thanking me, strangers calling me brave, but bravery isn't what I felt. I felt exposed, raw, hunted. Because behind every share, every cheer, there was silent, watching, plotting. That evening, a knock came at the door. I froze. Through the peephole, I saw, perfectly dressed as always, pearls gleaming, lips painted in a polite shade of cruelty. She said sweetly when I opened the door, May I come in? I hesitated, then stepped aside. She walked in like she owned the place, glancing around the living room as though she were appraising it for resale. I thought we could have a little talk, woman to woman. Woman to woman, I repeated. That's rich. She ignored the jab. Upset, you've embarrassed him deeply. You didn't have to make it public. Public, I said. He served me divorce papers in front of 100 guests. She smiled faintly. Well, perhaps he could handled it better, but you've always had a flair for dramatics. I felt my jaw tighten. I'm not the one who hired a lawyer to steal from my own husband. Her eyes flashed. Watch your words, dear. May forgive your little stunt, but I won't. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. He's already forgiven me, he just doesn't know it yet. She blinked, uncertain what I meant. Get out of my house, I said quietly. She hesitated for a moment, then smiled that slow, poisonous smile. You'll regret this. When the dust settles, everyone will see what you really are. I watched her leave, her heels clicking down the hallway like a countdown. When the door shut, I exhaled shakily. For the first time, I realized that I wasn't just fighting anymore. I was fighting both of them, and they'd spent a lifetime perfecting the art of quiet destruction. That night, I opened my laptop. The first email at the top of my inbox was from Hayes and Associates. The subject line, Urgent Property Settlement Review. I clicked it open. The message was brief. Mrs. Price, we have received instructions from your husband to prepare a revised property settlement agreement. Kindly confirm a time to discuss terms of your exit from the Georgetown residence. Exit. The word pulsed on the screen like a bruise. I stared at it, then hit reply. My fingers didn't tremble this time. Dear Mr. Hayes, you may wish to consult your ethics handbook before you proceed. The Georgetown condo is my sole legal property. Any attempt to alter that will constitute fraud. Kindly relay this message to your client. Regards, Mrs. Sterling. When I hit send, I felt something new, calm, sharp, electric. It wasn't anger, it was clarity. But clarity, I would soon learn, doesn't stop desperate men. Because 2 days later, I came home to find the front door slightly ajar. Inside, drawers were open, files scattered, and on the floor beside the broken vase from my wedding day lay a single piece of paper. A photocopy of my inheritance document. And written across it in handwriting. If you think this is over, you don't know me. My breath caught, the walls seemed to close in. The perfect life I once built was cracking, not from loss, but from vengeance. And in that moment, standing in the wreckage of what used to be our home, I realized the truth. Wasn't planning to win me back. He was planning to destroy me. The police said it looked like a simple break-in. A few drawers overturned, papers scattered, no signs of forced entry. They said maybe it was kids or someone looking for quick cash, but I knew better, I knew. He'd been in my house, my house. The irony wasn't lost on me. He'd spent weeks plotting to take it from me, and now he'd simply walked in like a thief in the night to dig through the remnants of his own lies. I sat on the living room floor, staring at the broken vase, shards glinting like tiny mirrors. It had been a wedding gift from my mother, the one she gave me with a note that said, "May your love always hold more than it breaks." I let out a shaky laugh. I wasn't sure if I was laughing at the note or at myself. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. "I just saw your name on the news again," she said, her voice breathless. "You're viral, girl. They're calling you the silver anniversary queen." I closed my eyes. "It's not funny." "Oh, I know," she said quickly. "But listen, they showed clips, him standing there looking like a fool. You're a legend. Every woman I know is sharing it." "I didn't want to be a legend," I whispered. There was a pause. "Are you okay?" I almost said yes, but the truth pressed heavy in my throat. "He broke in," I said quietly. "What?" Yes, I told her everything. The scattered papers, the note with his handwriting, the photocopy of my inheritance. "Oh, you need to call the police again," she said. I did. They don't believe me. No signs of forced entry. "Then get out of there," she urged. "Stay with someone." I looked around, the framed photos, the couch where we'd sat watching movies, the window view I'd loved for years. "No," I said finally. "He's not chasing me out of my home." After she hung up, I called my lawyer friend. She listened in silence, then said firmly, "We'll handle this legally. I'll file for a restraining order first thing in the morning, but tonight lock your doors, all of them, and don't let him get to you emotionally. That's his last weapon." I promised I wouldn't. But promises are fragile things. At 2 a.m., I woke to the faintest noise. A click, a floorboard, the kind of sound that might be a dream if you wanted it to be. My body went rigid. The condo was dark except for the silver wash of city light spilling through the blinds. I listened, nothing. Then another sound, softer this time, a whisper of movement from the kitchen. I reached for my phone on the nightstand, but my hands were trembling. No signal, of course. The cell tower on our street had been down for days. Slowly, I got out of bed. My bare feet brushed the cold tile as I stepped into the hallway. Every step sounded like thunder in my ears. The air smelled faintly of his cologne, bergamot, and wood, and that was when I knew. He was here. I could hear him rifling through the drawers again, papers shuffling. My pulse pounded in my throat. I picked up the heavy candle holder from the hall table, gripping it so tightly my knuckles whitened. When I turned the corner, the living room glowed faintly from the city lights. And there he was, his silhouette framed against the window, bent over my desk, searching for something. I said, my voice breaking the silence like glass. He froze. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then he straightened slowly, turning toward me. His face was half in shadow, but his eyes were wild. He said calmly, "You're supposed to be asleep. What are you doing here?" "Taking what's mine." I laughed, a short, sharp sound. "What's yours? You mean my documents, my life?" He stepped closer, voice low. "You humiliated me in front of everyone I know. Do you have any idea what that did to me? My career is gone, my reputation destroyed. I can't even walk into the office without people whispering. That's not my fault, that's yours." He slammed his hand on the desk, the sound cracking through the air. "You should stayed quiet." Something in me snapped then, the years of silence, the swallowed words, the fear of making him angry. I stepped forward, raising the candle holder. "Get out of my house." He looked almost amused. "Or what?" My grip tightened. "Try me." For a moment, we stared at each other. 25 years of marriage compressed into one standoff under the flickering streetlight through the window. Then, without another word, he turned toward the papers again. "I'll call the police," I said. He smiled. "Go ahead, tell them your husband came home to talk. That's not what this is, and you know it." He gathered a few papers, his movements frantic now. "You think you can ruin me and walk away happy? You think I'll let you?" "Stop." I lunged forward and grabbed his wrist. For a second, we both froze. His pulse throbbed under my fingers. Then he twisted, pushing me back hard. I hit the wall with a sharp cry, the candle holder clattering to the floor. "Don't touch me," he shouted. "You don't get to win. You never did." My head spun, the room blurred. I tried to push myself up, but he was already at the door, papers in hand, my papers. Oh, I shouted, "You can't." He slammed the door behind him. The echo rattled through the condo long after he was gone. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at the door, shaking. My hand went to my temple, warm, sticky. When I pulled it away, there was blood on my fingers. That was when I realized I needed help, not tomorrow, not legally, not quietly. Now. I grabbed my keys, still barefoot, and drove straight to his house. It was nearly 4 in the morning when I rang her bell. She opened the door in a robe, eyes wide when she saw the bruise forming on my cheek. Oh my God, what happened? He broke in again, I said, my voice barely steady, and he took the papers. She pulled me inside, sat me down, handed me a towel for my head. You're going to the hospital, she said firmly. Now we need this documented, and then we're getting a restraining order that sticks. I nodded numbly, the adrenaline fatting, leaving behind only exhaustion and disbelief. At the hospital, under the bright sterile lights, the nurse cleaned the small cut on my temple. You're lucky, she said gently. It's shallow, but you'll have a bruise. Lucky. That word burned because I didn't feel lucky. I felt hollow. When the doctor left, turned to me. Listen to me carefully, he's escalating. That note, the break-ins, now this, he's desperate. Men like him get dangerous when they start losing control. We need to make a move before he does something worse. I nodded slowly, staring at the white bandage on my temple. Do you want to press charges? She asked. I hesitated. The image of his face, furious, broken, vengeful, flashed before me. Yes, I said finally, I'm done being afraid. As she filled out the paperwork, I stared out the window at the faint glow of dawn breaking over the horizon. The city was waking up, indifferent to my story. But inside me, something else was waking too. I wasn't just going to defend myself anymore. I was going to finish this. And Price was about to learn what happened when the woman he underestimated stopped playing his game. By morning, the bruise on my temple had darkened to a violent shade of purple, a blooming reminder of the night before. The hospital had filed a report automatically. The nurse had photographed everything, even the faint outline of his fingers on my wrist. Stayed with me until dawn, refusing to let me leave alone. He's crossed the line, she said as we sat in the waiting area, paper cups of coffee growing cold in our hands. You've given him chances, warnings, now it's time to protect yourself properly. I stared at the white tile floor. I just want him gone. You'll get that, she said, but first we gather evidence. It felt surreal. The same man who once held me after funerals, who rubbed my shoulders when I worked late, now cataloged as a threat on an incident report. By mid-morning, a police officer came by to take my statement. He was polite, careful, but I could feel the skepticism hiding behind his neutral expression. To him, it was another domestic story, a wife, a husband, a disagreement gone too far. Do you have proof he entered without consent? He asked. I have a note, I said, written by him. He looked up. Do you still have it? I hesitated. No, he took it when he left. The officer sighed softly and wrote something in his notebook. We'll add it to the report, but without the note, it's your word against his. Crossed her arms. Then maybe you should check the security cameras in her building, or her phone records, or the fact that she's sitting here bleeding. The officer cleared his throat. We'll look into it. After he left, muttered under her breath, we'll look into it, that's code for nothing will happen until it's too late. I leaned back against the hospital wall, feeling the sterile chill against my bandaged temple. He won't stop, I said quietly. I saw it in his eyes. Put a hand on my arm, then we don't wait for him to stop, we stop him. That afternoon, I returned to the condo with her beside me. The door had been repaired by building maintenance, the locks changed. But even as I turned the key, the air inside felt wrong. The scent of my lavender candle lingered faintly, but beneath it, his cologne again. Noticed my hesitation. You don't have to stay here. I do, I said. This is my home. She nodded slowly. Then let's make sure it stays that way. We moved through the rooms together. Every drawer, every corner, every file. It was who found the first clue, a smudge of oil on the edge of the window frame where the latch had been forced from the outside. Looks like your intruder used a locksmith's tool, she murmured. Not random at all. She took photos, every angle, every trace. This will be enough to get a warrant if he comes back, she said. He's not as smart as he thinks. When she left, promising to call the detective directly, I stood by the window for a long time. Outside, Georgetown looked serene, indifferent, the same cobbled streets, the same hum of life. People walked dogs, drank coffee, checked their watches. I them. Then my phone buzzed, a text, unknown number. You made a mistake pressing charges, this isn't over. My blood turned to ice. I didn't need to guess who it was. I typed back before I could stop myself. Stay away, I'm not afraid of you anymore. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then came the reply. You should be. I deleted the conversation, forwarded a screenshot to, and then blocked the number. But the damage was done, the dread had already taken root. I turned to the hallway mirror. The bruise looked worse now, shadowed beneath my skin like a secret I couldn't hide. My reflection didn't look like me anymore. It looked like a woman balancing between fury and exhaustion. I opened the safe, checking again. The inheritance papers, the lawyer's letters, the original property deed, all still there. But I didn't feel reassured, because he'd already broken in once. That night I couldn't sleep. Every creak in the walls made my pulse jump. I kept the lights on. I sat in the armchair, clutching my phone, waiting for something, footsteps, a noise, a sign that I wasn't imagining all of this. At 2:17 a.m., my phone lit up. This time it wasn't a text, it was a call, unknown number again. I didn't answer. The ringing stopped, then started again. I let it go to voicemail. A moment later, the message alert pinged. Hands trembling, I hit play. Static for the first few seconds, then his voice. You can run to your friends, your lawyers, your little police buddies, but you can't run from the truth. You ruined my life, and I'm going to take yours apart piece by piece until you understand what that feels like. My stomach twisted. His tone was eerily calm, almost rehearsed. I sent the voicemail to immediately. Within minutes, she called back. Pack a bag now. I can't. Don't argue with me. I'm on my way. You're not staying there tonight. She arrived 20 minutes later, headlights cutting through the drizzle outside. As I locked the condo door behind me, I felt the strangest mix of grief and relief. Grief for the home I'd built. Relief that for once I was walking away before it burned. We stayed at her place that night. She insisted I take her bed while she worked on her laptop in the living room, compiling everything: photos, messages, voicemail audio, the hospital report. Around 3 a.m., I wandered out, unable to sleep. You should rest, she said gently. I can't. Every time I close my eyes, I see him standing in my house again. Sighed, he's spiraling. That's good news for us. He's sloppy. We'll catch him. She turned her laptop toward me. Look at this, she said. It was the metadata from the voicemail. He used a VoIP service. Untraceable, but the timestamp matches the same hour he money from your joint account. He's desperate, probably running out of options. I looked at the glowing screen and felt an ache deep in my chest. How did I not see what he really was? Looked at me for a long moment. Because you loved him, and love has a way of turning warning signs into reasons to stay. I swallowed hard. Not anymore. Before I could say more, her phone buzzed. She frowned, then answered. Hello, who is this? She went still, her expression darkened. How did you get this number? My stomach dropped. Who is it? Held up a finger, still listening. No, Mr. Price, you're not allowed to contact my client. That's harassment, and I will report this. She stopped. What did you say? Her eyes flicked to me wide. He says he has something that belongs to you. What? She listened again, then she hung up, jaw tight. What did he mean? I asked. Took a slow breath. He claims he still has copies of your inheritance documents and a recording. A recording? Yes, he said you admitted something. I think he's bluffing, trying to create leverage. My mind reeled. I had no idea what recording he could possibly mean. But then a memory hit me, one I'd tried to forget. 2 weeks before the anniversary, I'd called late one night. I was half asleep, half drunk on exhaustion, begging him to talk, to fix what was left. I'd said things out of hurt. Things like, maybe it's my fault we never had kids and I should been a better wife. Words that could be twisted into confession. My throat went dry. He recorded me, I whispered. His eyes softened. He's trying to break you emotionally. That's what abusers do when they lose control. They create new cages. I nodded, but fear was already taking root. What if he releases it? What if he? Then we counter it, she said firmly. You have the truth, he has a performance, that's the difference. Her words should have comforted me, they didn't. Because deep down, I knew wasn't bluffing. And the man who'd once said he couldn't live without me was now proving he could destroy me instead. The next morning, I returned to the hospital for a follow-up. The nurse who treated me earlier smiled softly when she saw me. Back again so soon. Just checking in, I said. As she unwrapped the bandage, she frowned. The bruise is deepening, you should rest. I'll try. But as I left, I caught sight of something across the street, a car, parked too long, engine idling. Inside, behind the tinted glass, I saw the faintest outline of a man's face. Watching me. And smiling. I didn't wait to confirm. I ran back into the hospital lobby, heart pounding. Because in that instant, I realized the truth, wasn't hiding anymore. He wanted me to see him. And whatever he was planning next was already in motion. I froze just inside the hospital's glass doors, the echo of my own heartbeat louder than the traffic outside. The car across the street sat motionless. Tinted windows, engine humming. I could feel his gaze even though I couldn't see his eyes. It was him, I knew it in my bones. The security guard at the front desk called, You okay, ma'am? I forced a smile that felt painted on. Just dizzy, I'll be fine. But I wasn't fine. Every instinct screamed that was watching, waiting, testing how close he could get before I broke. I turned and walked deeper into the hospital until the car was out of sight. My hands trembled as I dialed. "He's here," I whispered, "outside the hospital." "What?" Her voice sharpened immediately. "Are you sure?" "I saw his car." "Okay, stay inside. I'm calling the police right now." I waited near the nurse's station, pretending to study a bulletin board filled with flyers about blood drives and wellness programs. The minutes stretched long and brittle. "Called back, an officer on the way, don't leave the building." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. 15 minutes later, 2 officers arrived. I pointed toward the parking lot, but when they went outside, the car was gone. "He must have seen them coming," I said. The taller officer wrote in his notebook, "We'll review the surveillance footage, but until there's a direct threat, there's not much else we can do." The same sentence, the same helpless tone. Arrived shortly after, her face tight with concern. "He's escalating faster than I thought." "I can't live like this," I said, always looking over my shoulder. She squeezed my arm. "You won't have to. I called someone who can help. My cousin works in private security. He's ex-police, discreet, reliable. His name's Victor." By that evening, Victor was at his apartment, sitting across from me with a small notepad and calm, assessing eyes. "Tell me everything," he said simply. And I did, every break-in, every message, every moment of fear. He listened quietly, no interruptions, only nodding occasionally. When I finished, he said, "He's obsessed with control. That means he's predictable. He'll keep trying to prove he still has power over you, but that also means we can anticipate his moves." He handed me a small black device. "GPS tracker detector. Check your car, your bags, even your phone. If he's following you physically, he might be using tech too." The next day, Victor and I returned to my condo. He moved through each room methodically, scanning for hidden devices. Near the living room vent, the detector began to beep. He unscrewed the cover and pulled out a tiny black cube. "A listening bug." "He's been recording you," Victor said quietly, "probably since before the anniversary." My stomach churned. I felt suddenly naked, as if all my private thoughts had been stolen. Victor wrapped the device in foil and pocketed it. "We'll use this against him. For now, leave it to me." That night I stayed again with. We sat in her kitchen, the smell of chamomile tea mixing with the sharpness of anxiety. "I can't believe he'd go this far," I said. "Recording me for what?" "To build leverage," said grimly. "He wants to scare you into dropping the charges, but it's backfiring. Now we can prove harassment." I nodded, trying to steady my breath. Then's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and frowned. "It's..." My pulse spiked. "Don't answer." She ignored me. "If he's reckless enough to call me directly, it's better I record it." She swiped to accept, then turned on her phone's speaker. "Mr. Price," she said evenly, "this is a professional line. What do you want?" His voice came through, low and oily. "Tell I just want to talk, one conversation, no lawyers." "She's not interested." He chuckled. "Of course she's not. That's why I left something for her." My chest tightened. "What does that mean?" I whispered. His eyes narrowed. "Left where, Mr. Price?" "You'll find out soon enough," he said. "Tell her to check her doorstep." The line went dead. We exchanged a look. Victor, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, stood. "Stay here, I'll go." Minutes later, he returned holding a small manila envelope. No name, no return address. Slipped on gloves and opened it. Inside was a single USB drive and a printed photo. The photo was of me, taken that morning, standing in the hospital parking lot, staring at the car with the tinted windows. My blood ran cold. "He was close enough to take this," I whispered. "Picked up the USB. We need to see what's on it." Victor plugged it into his secure laptop. A single video file appeared. He hit play. The footage showed me inside my condo weeks earlier, talking on the phone. My voice was faint but clear. "Maybe it's my fault we never had kids. Maybe I pushed him away." The recording cut abruptly. Exhaled sharply. "He's trying to frame you as unstable. He wants sympathy." Victor leaned forward. "This footage came from that bug I found. He must had remote access." "So he's been spying for months," muttered. "Jesus." I pressed my palms against my forehead. "He wants to make me look crazy. That's his next move." Victor nodded. "Classic abuser tactic, shift the story, make himself the victim." "What do I do?" I asked. His voice steadied. "We expose him, but carefully. You can't fight rage with rage, you fight it with proof." She pulled out her phone. "We'll leak the bug to the police anonymously, and when they trace it to his purchase record, we'll have him. Meanwhile, you need to stay visible, don't hide. Go to work, talk to people, act normal. Men like thrive in the shadows, starve him of that. I tried to breathe. The idea of pretending normal felt impossible, but she was right. I had spent 25 years being silent for him, now silence would be his weapon. 3 days passed, each one stretched like an elastic band ready to snap. I worked, I smiled, I pretended. On the third night, I came home from work and found a letter under my door. No envelope this time, just a single sheet of paper. You're making a mistake, stop before someone gets hurt. I sat on the floor, letter trembling in my hands. The handwriting was, but the phrasing was colder, detached, as if written by a stranger. Victor came within minutes after I called him. He scanned the hallway, checked the security camera feed. He timed it, he said grimly. The building cameras loop every 15 minutes. He slipped in during the blind spot. My voice shook. What does he mean before someone gets hurt? Victor's jaw tightened. It's a threat, but it's also a mistake. We'll hand this straight to. Came the next morning with Detective Monroe, the same officer who doubted me before. This time, his tone had changed. We traced the listening device, he said. It matches an order made under Price's name. That gives us probable cause. Probable cause for what? I asked. To bring him in for questioning. It wasn't justice yet, but it was movement. They left to find him that afternoon. I stayed at his apartment again, packing the living room, checking my phone every 5 minutes. By evening, Monroe called. We found him, he said, or what's left of him. My heart stopped. What do you mean? He was in a car accident an hour ago. Single vehicle crash near the river. He's alive, but in critical condition. I sank onto the couch, the world spinning. Critical. Yes, ma'am, we recovered his phone and a laptop from the car. Both will be examined. We'll update you once he's stable enough for questioning. When I hung up, knelt in front of me. Hey, look at me, she said softly. This might be the end of it. But I shook my head slowly. No, you don't know, he never lets anyone else write the ending. The hospital called the next day. He was awake. Against advice, I went. I told myself it was closure, but deep down it was something darker, a need to see his face when he realized he'd lost. He was in room 302, pale against the white sheets, one arm in a cast, bruises along his jaw. For a man who had spent his life controlling others, he looked small now, fragile even. When he saw me, his lips curved into a faint smirk. You came, he croaked. I came to make sure it's really over. He coughed a laugh. Over, you never understood me. Then explain, I said quietly. He turned his head, his voice barely a whisper. You think this is about revenge? It's not, it's about balance. You took everything from me, my career, my name, my pride. I just wanted to take back a little piece of what was mine. What was yours? I asked. My life. He smiled weakly. Our story. I stared at him for a long moment, then leaned closer. You don't get to control the story anymore. You wrote the first half. I'll write the ending. His smirk faltered. Be careful, the truth has a way of circling back. I straightened, then let it. I turned to leave. The last thing I heard was his laughter, soft, broken, echoing down the sterile hallway. But even as I walked away, a chill crept down my spine. Because something in his tone didn't sound defeated. It sounded like a warning. And I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever truth he was talking about hadn't surfaced yet. A week passed before the phone rang again. It was Detective Monroe. His voice was brisk but heavy. Mrs. Sterling, we finished reviewing the evidence from your husband's car. I froze mid-step and... There's more than we expected, he said. His laptop contained several recordings, drafts of emails, and something else you should see. Are you available to come in today? I felt the old ache rise again, the same pulse of dread that had followed every mention of for months, but this time I didn't hesitate. I'll be there in an hour. When I arrived at the station, Monroe met me in a small interview room. He slid a folder across the table. Inside were screenshots, photos, bank transactions, message logs, but it was the last photo that stopped my breath. It wasn't of me. It was of a young woman, expensive clothes, Sierra. The caption beneath it read, "Asset secured, waiting for transfer." Monroe's tone softened. We think he wasn't just having an affair, Mrs. Sterling, he was being manipulated. Manipulated? Sierra wasn't who she claimed to be. She's part of a real estate scheme, targets wealthy men, gains access to assets through romantic involvement, and disappears with the proceeds. We believe was her next mark. But you exposed everything before she could finalize the transfers. That's likely why things escalated so violently between you two. I stared at the photo, my heart pounding. Sierra's smile looked different now, cold, transactional. So he wasn't just betraying me, I whispered. He was being betrayed too. Monroe nodded. He didn't know she was recording him just like he recorded you. The video files we found, there's one more you need to see. He turned his laptop toward me. The video opened on a dimly lit hotel room. Sat on the bed, phone pressed to his ear. His voice was sharp, desperate. You said the condo was going to be ours, Sierra. I did everything you asked. Off camera, her voice was icy. You did everything wrong, now you're a liability. Liability, he shouted. You said we'd be together. The door slammed and the recording cut out. Monroe closed the laptop. We found the footage timestamped 2 days before the anniversary party. I sat back dizzy. All this time I'd thought was the puppet master, but he was tangled in strings too, strings held by someone far. I didn't know whether to feel vindicated or sick, maybe both. The next morning I visited the hospital again. The air in his room smelled of antiseptic and stale regret. He was sitting up this time, eyes fixed on the small TV in the corner, where a muted news broadcast replayed my viral moment for the 1,000th time. He turned his head when I entered. Still famous, I see, he muttered. I stood by the door. They told me about Sierra. His mouth twisted. Of course they did, everyone loves a twist. She used you, I said quietly. He gave a hollow laugh. Don't act like you didn't enjoy watching me fall. I didn't enjoy any of it, you did this to yourself. He looked at me then, not with anger, but with something fragile, almost human. You know what the worst part is? He asked. I really thought she loved me. After everything I did to you, I thought maybe I deserved someone new. And she played me better than I ever played anyone. Silence stretched between us. For a moment I saw the man I'd once loved, the man who used to dance with me barefoot in the kitchen, who made coffee just the way I liked it. Then I blinked and that man was gone again. I'm sorry, he said suddenly. The words were barely a whisper. I didn't know whether to believe him, but for the first time I didn't need to. I accept your apology, I said softly, but not for you, for me. He closed his eyes. They're going to charge me, aren't they? Yes. He nodded, almost relieved. Good, maybe I'll finally stop pretending to be someone worth pity. I turned to leave, pausing at the door. He looked up. You were right about one thing, I said. The truth always circles back, but sometimes it doesn't destroy, it frees. His eyes glistened, but he said nothing. I walked away for the last time. 3 months later, I was standing on the balcony of my new apartment in Miami. The ocean shimmered beneath a gold sunrise, waves breaking softly against the shore. The air smelled like salt and clean beginnings. I had sold the Georgetown condo and donated part of the proceeds to a women's legal aid fund. The rest I used to launch something new, Sterling Stories, a podcast and channel dedicated to real-life stories of survival, betrayal, and healing. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had become the storyteller now. Each week, thousands of women wrote in, sharing their own secrets, their own reckonings. And every time I sat in front of the microphone, I thought of the woman I used to be, the one who whispered instead of speaking, who waited for permission to be strong. Not anymore. A soft breeze brushed through the open doors. My phone buzzed, a message from. Just saw your latest episode. Proud of you, you turned pain into power. I smiled. Another message followed from an unknown number. My chest tightened for a heartbeat, but when I opened it, the words were simple. Thank you for the truth. Duh. For a long time, I stared at the screen. I didn't reply. Maybe it was someone else entirely. It didn't matter anymore. I set the phone down, leaned on the balcony railing, and listened to the waves. In the distance, the horizon glowed pink, soft and endless. For the first time in 25 years, my life wasn't defined by someone else's choices. It was mine, every scar, every line, every lesson. And as the recording light blinked on inside, I stepped back into the studio and spoke into the mic, my voice steady, sure. Some stories don't end when the love does. Some stories begin the moment you stop being afraid of your own truth. I paused, then smiled. So tell me, what would you have said if it were you holding the microphone? The outro music swelled softly beneath my words. Leave your thoughts in the comments, and remember, your story isn't over yet. I clicked stop. The screen flashed, recording saved, episode 1, the silver anniversary. Outside, the sun rose higher, scattering gold across the water. And somewhere between the shimmer of morning and the hum of the sea, I finally understood what freedom sounded like.